Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the first of a series of webinars and podcasts called the HealthyHelix, your personalized roadmap to health. My name is Lois Nahirney, and I'm the CEO of dnaPower.
And I'm Nancy White, the CEO of Inagene Diagnostics, Inc. We're really excited to be launching this groundbreaking webinar series that's really about empowering you to learn more information so you can take even greater control of your health. There's a lot of interesting advancements in the world of science, and we're going to introduce you to what is readily and easily available to you as the curator of your own health.
Fantastic. And so Nancy and I are super passionate about personalized health. We really came from other careers and got into this because it is so important. And we're creating this podcast series so that we can bring this information to you to help you live your healthiest life. And so, what is personalized health? Well, fundamentally, every one of us is unique. We each have a unique genetic makeup. We have a roadmap that can help us lead to our best lives. And this genetic uniqueness goes well beyond the physical things such as our hair and eye color or how we might, look like our family. What Nancy and I are particularly interested in is the areas of genetic uniqueness that impact our health. So we know one size doesn't fit all in terms of diet and exercise. And we've heard about the latest diet fads such as keto, paleo, grapefruit. There's the latest exercise program. And for some reason, it seems to work for, your buddy down the street, but not for you. And in fact, some of these fads do more harm than good for a lot of people. So we are super unique in our bodies and our metabolism, how we manage weight, the diseases that we're actually predisposed to, and we all need different things to help optimize our health. And the reason is we each have unique genetic code that creates this roadmap for our body during our lifetime. And we need to live according to our body's roadmap in order to be our healthiest. And that's what we want to be sharing with you on this podcast. Nancy?
And yes, it's so exciting to discuss this, Lois, because it even goes beyond just those day-to-day impacts of how we live our life and the lifestyle that we choose. But at some point in our lives, most of us need to take a medication. And that could be as simple as an aspirin or an Advil or a Tylenol. But if you even think about if you've ever had a dental procedure, you're given pain relief medication, we all respond differently to those medications. And you're right, it's all encoded in our DNA. So what works for you might not work for me. And one example I always like to share is that I naturally gravitate towards Advil. I never really made a conscious decision of why I did, but once I got my test results back, I am a non-responder to Tylenol. So it made perfect sense. But the key really lies in your genetics, and what works for one will not work for everyone.
Yeah. And so, the part of this, Nancy, that's interesting is we can learn now, and this is really new, learning your genetic roadmap, being able to test super easily to get your DNA and have that is kind of this way to help you guide your life. But what's particularly important about your genetics is that it isn't the outcome and the destiny. You can influence how that roadmap works. And so it's called epigenetics. It's how you live your life and the decisions you make affect how your genetics express themselves. And so what you want to be doing is making sure that you're expressing the good things and not the bad things. So we respond, and our bodies respond to absolutely everything we're exposed to. The foods we eat, the supplements we take, the amount of exercise we do, the environmental factors you're exposed to, and even, of course, to the medications prescribed to you. And with this tsunami of chronic disease we have impacting our population, if you can learn how to make little decisions to match your body's needs, you can avoid the health issues that you will be most at risk of that really are starting to plague our society. And you can reap these personalized health benefits. And so the code to living our best lives and having our best health is sitting right in us. And this information is now available for us. It's in this helix of our DNA. And technology is at the place where we can learn this and then find out what we need to do day to day in order to be healthier. So Nancy, maybe you can talk a little bit about why this podcast now.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, with COVID and how it's shifted our society in terms of how we're living, more than ever, people are taking control of their own health and very concerned about the health risks that might exist, either due to the pandemic, but also paying much greater attention to how we're taking care of ourselves during these trying times. It's shocking when people discover and understand that the number 4 cause of death in North America is due to adverse events from medications, bad side effects that land them in the ER. And so as people are very nervous about the impacts of what's happening societally with COVID at the moment, there are many strategies we can employ to ensure that we're living a healthy life and making choices that will impact our health in the unnecessary event that we might need to take a medication or end up awfully in the hospital due to some of these impacts. But understanding that 98% of us do carry a genetic variant that will ultimately impact how we respond to medications is a little bit overwhelming, but also incredibly empowering, because once you understand what your body is able to process, able to do, you really can take control of your life. And again, really anchoring around that holistic approach of what you're talking about as well, with the power of some of the things that we can evaluate through the tests that your company offers.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I know we came from different backgrounds in order to get into what we're doing now. And part of it, the reason I got into this is because it actually saved my health. And it's interesting. So, as a corporate executive, the reality of this 21st century is that so many of us spend our health in order to gain our wealth. And then we spend our wealth gaining back our health or our time, or we lose some of that preciousness that we need. And really, you must see this as well. The number of people that we see really having to work so hard to gain back their health, it's just really difficult. And so what we want to be able to do is to help you do that, to start with, help you be preventative. And that's really how I got into this business. I lost my health. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story. And so I was a corporate executive, flying around the world. I had twins adopted from Asia. So I was actually quite interested in genetics because I had these identical twins. But in my 40s, I started to get sick. I was starting to feel really exhausted and tired all the time. I was really worryingly had a shortness of breath that we couldn't kind of resolve. I had something called restless leg syndrome. I was anemic, and I was just getting worse and worse and worse. And so, it's hard to make the time, but I made the time to go to doctors, went to a respirologist, an asthma specialist, gynecologist, to an oncologist, thinking, maybe I had cancer. We couldn't find anything wrong. There was nothing that we could we could put our finger on. Well, Nancy, it culminated that I ended up being admitted to hospital because I was about to collapse. I had no iron left in my body to be able to help me function. And I was in there for 2 days of blood transfusions with my kids with a sitter at home and my husband out of town. And it was just such a scary thing to go through. And it was just shortly after that, that I ended up at actually my grandma's birthday party. And I had a cousin who's a Canadian bodybuilding champion and said to me, you got to try this new DNA stuff, this lifestyle DNA out, and see, you're going to learn great stuff about your adopted twins. And I thought, well, I'll do it for me too, support you and what have you. So we did it. We got the results back, learned lots about my twins. But the surprising thing for me is what I learned about myself. And I discovered in this information that just like you learned about Advil being the right one for you, not Tylenol, I discovered I've got genetic weaknesses related to vitamin Bs. And if I don't take vitamins, it's hard for my body to process them. It's hard for them to get them. And so I thought, well, let me try that out. So I started taking, a complex B, methylated ones that my system could get more easily. And within 2 weeks, all of these symptoms of fatigue, restless leg syndrome, shortness of breath started to go away. And it turns out I was just really nutrient deficient on these vitamins that trigger the iron, which trigger the oxygen, which triggers the breath. And my body was really quite desperate for it. So it turns out my pharmaceutical or my drug of choice is vitamins, specifically B's, in order to stay healthy. And I also learned that I have some issues with lactose. And as soon as I cut my dairy down, I lost that kind of, pound a year you start gaining in your 40s and, drop 10 pounds. And I thought, how could it have been that simple to be well after 4 years really of hell? And now I got my health back. How can we make this accessible to people? And I made a decision. I'm going to help bring this technology to the world, and I want to help people be healthier. And that's really what we do in our business today. I mean, I just love that every single day we get to help people understand what they need to do to be living their best life every day, to help their health, help their diet. And people are getting healthier, less disease, feeling better. And, I couldn't be happier. I know I personally have added 10 years to my life because of what I do now and what I've learned, if not more. So it was an exciting way to get into it. And we have learned so much. I'm really excited, Nancy, to be able to share some of that information as we go through our podcasts.
And Lois, you really are truly a vision of health. And thank you for sharing that story. It's so deeply personal, but I'm sure very impactful for many of the listeners today. My story is completely different than yours, and I too was a corporate executive working in the pharmaceutical industry for the last 2 decades. And it's a great industry. The scientific advances are amazing. It's a highly regulated industry, as it should be. But one thing, over years of commercializing new molecules, new drugs, and bringing them to patients, one thing was a regular occurrence that we saw, and that was when our sales representatives would go out to educate physicians about these new medicines, you would hear stories of doctors who thought, wow, this drug is amazing, I'm going to use it in all my patients. And then there were other doctors who are like, this drug is terrible, it does not work, and I'm going to stick with what I am comfortable using. So not really understanding what was going on other than the doctor had a bad experience with the drug, there is so much more to that story. So drugs, when they are commercialized, again, studied through clinical trials, and the data that is published is based on averages. So the average of the population studied and what the outcome looked like. Well, we all know that individuals are not averages. We are unique, and so is our response to drugs. And understanding what the science of pharmacogenetics can do, which is ultimately help you understand as an individual how your body will or will not respond to a certain medication, it literally was enlightening in that the doctors who probably had that bad experience trialing the product, they would have given it to a patient who would have not felt better, would have perhaps had worse side effects, and they're like, forget it, this is just too much trouble to try and use this. And they might have had a similar experience with the next patient. Whereas that doctor who thought, wow, this drug is great and I'm going to use it for all my patients, well, they were lucky in that they probably prescribed it to someone that had no known gene variants and just had a normal response, which would have matched what the data was published, again, looking at the average. So knowing that no one is average and we're all unique, this science is so powerful to just, again, unlock those benefits. And the most recent experience I had in Big Pharma was working in the oncology area. And oncology is a really exciting space to work in because the science advances are just moving so quickly. And of all of the therapeutic areas where medications are available, I would argue that oncology is probably the most personalized because they're now developing drugs that target certain mutations of genes. And if you happen to have that mutation, then your response to that medication is so much greater. And for oncology patients, we're talking about extending people's lives so they can live as healthy as they can while they manage their disease. So the science is just so exciting that it's hard not to want to share the information with everyone and make sure that everyone has this available to them as a unique tool and resource that personalizes their own experience.
Yeah, there is just so many things that we can be talking about, and I'm really excited to be able to get into them. But what we wanted to do today was to just introduce this to folks and help you understand how knowing your DNA really can impact your health and make all the difference. And so what we want to do as we go into other episodes is each month do a deeper dive on a specific topic and on things that we think that related to personalized health and what we think you want to know about. And so next month, we're going to do a deep dive on COVID and keeping your immunity supercharged this fall as this virus continues to move around. And as we have higher incidence of colds and flu potentially, because we've all been living in a bubble for 6 months, our immunity may not be as strong as it has, just because we have been indoors. So we look forward to talking about that, what you can do to protect it, how your genetics can guide you and give you some information on it, and lots of natural techniques you can use to keep your immunity up, as well as to pharmaceuticals and things to know of if you do get sick. And then Nancy and I want to show you what this stuff can look like. We want to show you our own results and share that with you about what we learned about our DNA and then how it really has transformed our lives personally. But in that, ultimately, we're here to answer your questions and talk about what you are most interested in. And we've got this great exposure across a real range of things related to genetics and to preventative health. So we would love to hear from you and answer your questions in an upcoming episode live, or just email us and tell us what you want to know about personalized health. And you can do that at health@dnaPower.com. So till then, Nancy, it's been a delight to be able to get this all kicked off with you. We can't wait to have more fireside chats together. And we want to wish everyone listening to be well and take power over your health.
That's fantastic, Lois. And to all our listeners, we're really excited to carry on the dialogue. So again, please feel free to reach out and send us your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.